In recent times, local Chinese governments have been heavily subsidizing companies to go global and compete for orders overseas. Jiangsu province has openly declared its intention to increase its voice in the international market. However, a report released by the United States on March 31 criticized the Chinese Communist Party for continuing to provide unfair competitive advantages to Chinese companies, and stated that the United States would protect the competitiveness of its own enterprises. April is a critical month for Chinese companies to obtain overseas orders. In recent times, local Chinese governments have been introducing policies to provide funding subsidies for foreign trade enterprises to go global and compete for orders. An article published on the official website of the Jiangsu provincial government on April 3 stated that this year, the entire province's enterprises have launched a wave of grabbing orders in the global market, and that they should use hard power to enhance their voice in the international market. Jiangsu is a strong province in China's manufacturing industry, with its manufacturing scale maintaining the first place in the country for many years. On March 28, the Shanxi provincial government announced in a press conference that it would support enterprises to expand into overseas markets and focus on supporting 20 overseas exhibitions, subsidizing booth fees, exhibition transport fees, and other expenses, in order to enable more Shanxi brands to obtain overseas orders. For enterprises with export amounts exceeding $65 million in 2022, the Shanxi local government can provide up to a maximum of 1 million yuan, approximately $150,000, in subsidies. On March 28, the Huangpu district of Shanghai also introduced relevant policies to support companies in participating in overseas exhibitions, offering subsidies of up to 50% of the booth fee to those who meet the requirements. In mid-March, Qingdao and Shandong province implemented detailed measures to support foreign trade companies in the city to participate in overseas exhibitions and carry out key business activities abroad. Zhongshan City in Guangdong province organized an overseas exhibition event called Hundreds of Exhibitions and Thousands of Enterprises, providing round-trip airfare subsidies and exhibition organization subsidies for eligible exhibiting companies. On March 24, Zhongshan City issued 15 policies to boost the economy, the sixth of which supports companies in expanding their markets overseas, and the number of overseas exhibitions for 2023 has been expanded from the original 130 to 200. Chinese companies going global to compete for orders with official guidance and support is not a new phenomenon. Due to the downward pressure on the Chinese economy and the significant reduction in local land finance, some regions began organizing groups to go global and compete for orders from mid-2022 to avoid the collapse of local finance. But official data released by the CCP shows that China's total exports from January to February this year were $506.3 billion, down 6.8% year-on-year. Li Songyun, an economics PhD who has long been concerned about the Chinese economy, said, "Local CCP governments support local companies to go overseas for exhibitions, visiting customers, and competing for orders. But it is obviously unable to stop China's export value from continuing to decline from January to February this year. The main reason causing China's weak exports is not the weakening of global demand, but the manufacturing supply chain, including foreign and domestic enterprises, has been shifting out of China and turning to Southeast Asia and South America, resulting in a significant decline in export orders." She mentioned that the most prominent example is Kunshan, the richest county in China and one of the busiest export centers, where local workers can no longer find jobs. In other words, China's status as the world's factory has begun to collapse. Li Songyun believes that the main reasons for the supply chain moving out of China include the CCP's continuous strengthening of political and economic control over the entire society, the increasingly tense relationship between China and the US, and the rising geopolitical risks. As long as these factors do not change, the trend of the supply chain moving outward will not reverse. Even if Chinese companies go overseas to compete for orders, the boosting effect on exports will be limited. Although the new export order index surpassed the critical point, 50%, and entered the expansion zone in February this year, it began to decline in March. The PMI released by the National Bureau of Statistics of China on March 31 showed that the new export order index for manufacturing in March was 50.4%, a decrease of 2.0 percentage points from the previous month. The new export order index for non-manufacturing was 48.1%, a decrease of 3.8 percentage points from the previous month. Chinese companies going global with the support of the government to grab orders is just one of the means by which the CCP attempts to manipulate market competition. The 2023 National Trade Estimate Report, released by the Office of the United States Trade Representative on March 31, points out that the Chinese government's financial support of Chinese companies and its use of non-market economic and trade methods continue to provide unfair competitive advantages to Chinese companies. Chinese companies going global with the support of the government to grab orders is just one of the means by which the CCP attempts to manipulate market competition. The 2023 National Trade Estimate Report, released by the Office of the United States Trade Representative on March 31, points out that the Chinese government's financial support of Chinese companies and its use of non-market economic and trade methods continue to provide unfair competitive advantages to Chinese companies. The opposite situation, deterioration of operating environment for foreign investment in China. The operating environment for foreign companies in China is increasingly deteriorating. Just before the China Development Forum was held, Beijing authorities arrested 5 Chinese employees of an American investigative company. The opposite situation, deterioration of operating environment for foreign investment in China. The Mintz Group is based in New York and mainly engages in investigations of fraud, corruption, workplace misconduct allegations, and corporate backgrounds. The statement from the company expressed belief that its branch offices and employees had not done anything wrong. On March 26, a high-ranking executive of Astellas Pharma Incorporated, a Japanese pharmaceutical company, was reported to have been arrested in Beijing. The arrested man was allegedly suspected of violating China's spy law. At the same time, foreign companies, including those from Europe and America, find it easy to enter China but difficult to exit. On March 2 of this year, billionaire investor Mark Mobius told Fox Business Channel that he had an account with HSBC Bank in Shanghai, China, but he couldn't withdraw his money. The Chinese government is restricting the outflow of capital from China. He said, "I can't explain why they're doing this. They've put up all sorts of obstacles." This billionaire has led emerging market investments at Franklin Templeton Investments for 30 years and is known for his optimism about China. Mobius said that Chinese authorities asked him to produce all records of how he made the money over the past 20 years. "It's crazy," he said. He warned investors to be very, very careful when investing in economies that are strictly controlled by the government. Foreign businesses in China are also facing difficulties. On March 17 of this year, China's Ministry of Finance announced a penalty of 212 million Chinese yuan, $30.86 million against Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu, one of the 4 largest accounting firms in the United States, for serious deficiencies in its audit of its client, China Huarong. In fact, due to the deteriorating operating environment, some foreign companies have been transferring their operations outside of China over the past year. In early March of this year, the president of the China-U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Craig Allen, stated that in order to diversify the risk of the China supply chain, some U.S. companies have already begun to invest in other countries and establish alternative industrial chains. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, also spoke at a forum in China on March 25. While Cook stated that the Chinese market is important, in the past year, the company's contract manufacturing for products such as iPhones and iPads has been accelerating its shift towards India and Vietnam.